All right, everyone, welcome to another edition of the Good Life Small Business Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Blakely, and I am pleased to be joined today by Nic Bianchi, Bianchi Candle Company. Did I get it right?
You did.
Okay. Didn't butcher it. I have known about Nic and his story for about 2 years. When I interviewed Janelle at Grow, Nebraska, she gave me a magazine and she said, Nic has a great story. And so this is a long time in the making. I'm really excited to get to know you and hear your story. But first, let's get to know you a little bit better. What books are you reading or listening to right now?
The book that we just started I'm getting into is The Snowball. It's Warren Buffett's biography. Just learning about, it's one of the only ones that someone's been allowed to write about. It's just talking about how he's kind of started with nothing and grew in Omaha and was kind of the hidden gem of the Midwest.
How old is that book?
Oh God, I have probably 10 years maybe.
Really?
Yeah, it's a pretty old book.
I haven't heard of it. So that's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
How about podcasts?
All the podcasts have been morbid.
Yeah?
Yeah.
That's all right. That's all right.
Yeah, no business podcasts, yes.
That's all right. That's right. You were saying that you're really too busy to be reading books or listening anyway, so.
Yeah, no, it's been a lot of just kind of long nights, early mornings, getting ready. We just got done doing a big market run for January, and we're about to actually head out to market again this week, where you're able to just go and talk to wholesale owners, different kind of store owners and buyers, get their input and get orders into the system.
Nice. All right, Nic, so start from the very beginning, because you've got a great story, but go back, take me through the very beginning and just lead me up to today as far as your company and how it came to be.
I won't give you the full long story because it's a really long story. It's
We got
an 8-year story. But when I started, it just started off for my 12th birthday. I got a candle making kit from my parents, which was a very odd and shocking gift as a 12-year-old.
Yeah.
Because it was that, and then it was one of the James Bond movies, so very interesting. But that night we went downstairs, we poured the 3 candles that came inside the kit. And after that night, I fell in love with the math and science that went into making those candles. The different science of what kind of fragrance and essential oils you use, what kind of wax you can use, the difference between the wick radius versus the container, having it too hot or too cold. Loved all those aspects of it. So we kept making some candles, selling to teachers, family, just kind of little stuff here and there. And then we were able to go to our very first craft show, and we ended up selling 168 units at that craft show, which was huge for a 12-year-old who didn't know anything about business.
Right.
From there, it was a little bit of a boost of finances that we were able to turn it back around, buy some more inventory, and update the line so it was actually a sellable product and not just looks like you made it out of your kitchen.
Sure.
And from there, we, at 13, kind of hit the streets, started knocking on doors, selling into stores, got into our very first boutique down in Bellevue, and then that just kind of kept sparking little stuff here and there from kind of nurturing that entrepreneurial side of the whole business. From there, just kind of grew little by little from adding on the very first line that ended up being completely redesigned into the Bianchi line that people see today. Then we added on the Yeshu candle line, and most recently we added on the Market Street candle line. And so across all 3 lines, we're in different distributors around the country. We also ship around the world.
Got it.
Yeah.
So you started when you were 12.
Yeah.
And you're how old now?
I just turned 20.
So growing this business while going to school.
Yeah.
High school and all that, yeah?
Yeah.
That has to come with its own set of challenges, right? Like
It does.
Growing a business while you're trying to grow up yourself.
Yeah. Still growing up.
Yeah. What was that like?
It was very confusing and conflicting because you didn't really know. You didn't know a lot of the things you were doing, so you had to kind of learn as you were going through it. You also were kind of the misunderstood person because it's like you're trying to explain to an adult, but they don't see it because you're not an adult, so it's like weird to them. But then at the same time, you're not equal to your peers because you are farther in other aspects. So it's just always you're kind of in this gray area constantly.
Yeah.
And there still are in some cases. So kind of learning and navigating that, understanding that while you're growing the business, it's okay not to know that, and then asking the right questions and learning very fast who to ask and why to ask it, and then being able to take that question back to your team and implementing it. And when you're doing that at the age of 14, that's very difficult.
Yeah.
And then simultaneously, you have to wake up the next morning, go to school, and act like everything's normal.
Right.
So it was very weird, very hard to navigate, but I bet probably when I was 17, I kind of had it down. We were able to work with my principal at the high school. He was able to shorten up our hours to where it was the bare minimum that we needed to graduate, and so it was a lot more time at work instead of at school. And through those years, you saw a transition from 100% school and business was a hobby to more school was a hobby, business was 100%.
Got it.
And you saw that transition just kind of as from sophomore, junior, senior year until graduation, until we could fully flow into being 100% part of the business.
Got it. Was that lonely? You had to be a little bit of an outlier, like you said. But honestly, You know, part of being a small business owner is, to a certain degree, you can network with people and kind of talk about the business. But you know, people your age probably weren't really concerned at all about being an entrepreneur or a business owner or anything like that. They may have thought it was cool, but all the work that goes into it.
Yeah, well, that's where it even comes down to, because it's like the people that are peers, the teachers, everybody, they didn't really get it.
Right.
I mean, it's very weird when you see the person that you're teaching running a business that's like, hey, that's candles my whole family buys. I didn't even know it. Like, it's very odd.
Right.
So yeah, it was very lonely because there wasn't really anybody to relate with. And a lot of times when people wanted to talk to you, they either wanted to talk shop or they were more of the whole tell the same story. And so those were pretty much the two things you got. No one really got the personal level. No one really got who Nic Bianchi was. So to that aspect it was, but the way I kind of adapted with that was the people who did get it were other people in the business community.
Okay.
So finding people who didn't look at me as an age or a number, they saw me as the experience that I was able to bring and the potential I was able to learn. So they saw that aspect of it and they treated me like an equal, and then we were able to get those kind of friendships. And that's what kind of helped me expand into the business entrepreneurial side in Omaha and grew friendships throughout there. So a lot of my people that we call like friends are minimum 10 years older than me. But they don't, even when I see them and we're hanging out in public or anything else, they don't even like it. They're always like, yeah, you would never guess how old this kid is.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Was there ever a point where you thought about giving up, or not giving up, but maybe putting on hold or just kind of taking a break?
Like all entrepreneurs, yes.
Yeah.
And it's more than once.
Yeah.
That's something that happens. It's a lot more than what people think, just because there's different aspects as you grow a business, where some aspects are because you're personally tied to it, so every single blow that the business feels, you feel.
Yeah.
But then there's also an aspect where you kind of step back and either you're talking to your board of directors, you're talking to your investors, or just other people that are involved with the business. They're not necessarily seeing what you're seeing, so it feels like you're back to that whole misunderstood aspect. And so there's a lot of different ways that I feel like I and other entrepreneurs that I've talked to feel that give up feeling. But the biggest thing is being an entrepreneur, that flame's always there. No matter how small or big it is, it's always there. And so it's a matter of just making sure that you put yourself in the right shoes, put yourself around the right people that are going to help rebuild that confidence, and just keep going with it.
Do you feel like you were receptive to ideas from other people?
Yeah, I feel like even if I wasn't in the very beginning, I had to be, because you're 12. There's a lot you don't know.
Yeah, absolutely.
And even now, because there's a lot of times I'll talk to people and it's like, hey, I know all of this in this industry, but I don't know anything about what we're about to go into. Right. And so, yeah, you just, even if you don't want to hear it, just hear it, see what it's like, and then take the constructive criticism, run with it. And I've always been taught as the CEO, you're supposed to take everyone else's ideas and make the best one. Right. So even if you don't like it, just take them all in, and then you can make your decision.
Yeah, very cool. Talk about how the business has grown and the challenges that go along with that. I mean, you're making candles from a kit to the very beginning. Now you were telling me before we hit record, you've got a warehouse, you've got this set up here. Just kind of talk about how that, from the start to where you are now, and kind of the challenges that go along with growing a business like that.
There's a lot of challenges.
Yeah.
Because since we have everything in-house, a lot of challenges as we have grown from the very beginning. I mean, you're juggling bringing on your first couple employees, you're juggling building out distribution, sales channels, also designing and redeveloping the product on a consistent basis, so you're always bringing the next new thing. You have to do consistent market research. You also have to make sure that you are giving the best quality products, so you have to make sure you're checking in on the suppliers, so stuff that you don't have control over, making sure that they actually are doing what their job is. And you're also just running payroll, making sure you have cash flow, if you need funding, getting that. Being out there and just doing stuff like this, advertisement, all that kind of stuff. You're juggling that as one person in the very beginning, and you can't let anything slip. And even when you have a small team, you are still juggling it all because everyone's now wearing multiple hats, but there's just not enough anything to really have it be the way it should be set up, especially as a small business. And I've even talked to some people who are probably 10, 20 times the size of us, and they're like, we still run into that issue.
Yeah. I think there's challenges along the way. No matter whether it's new or you're in the middle or you're maybe getting towards the end and deciding what you're going to do with that, but there's challenges along the way. But did you ever see in it growing this big? Like, was that the goal, or was this just kind of something that happened?
My goal is always to grow big, I don't necessarily know what the big meant.
Yeah.
So when I'm looking at big, it's like, oh, manufacture, but like, who are we selling to? Or it's, let's sell to these people, but how are we going to manufacture it?
Right.
So it's always the grow big, and then as we've grown, we've just kind of learned along the way. And even to this day, we get people who we're talking to where it's like, oh, here's what we're going to do. And it's like, well, we've never done that before, but it's never a no. It's okay, like, how are we going to do it?
Right.
And then you can go back to your team and everyone's all like ready to go. Let's make it happen. And so we're still learning that stuff every single day.
Yeah. Don't take this the wrong way. Are there challenges having employees when you're 17, 18, 19 years old who are taking, like, do you ever get any pushback?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Because it's kind of a two-way street with that. There is an aspect of some people that I hire are the same age as my parents. And there's also an aspect of I'm still a learning leader. So it's kind of some stuff is on me, some stuff is just, it's the situation at hand.
Right.
But what we try to do through the cycle of people that we've had come through the business is learning how to build kind of that team spirit and making sure that everyone realizes when you're working with Bianchi Candle Company, you're working with a family, and then giving them that aspect and giving them that pride of being a part of the family instead of just having it, you're just an employee or you're just a number on a sheet.
Right.
That's one big thing that we learned is that is the most important thing that we should be doing here is making sure that employees feel equal and they feel heard.
Yeah. How many employees do you have right now?
5 full-time, and then there's a bunch of miscellaneous 1099s.
Got it. Very cool. What's your favorite part about being a small business owner?
I don't know.
Too many to count?
Yeah, too many.
You don't really know any different, do you?
No. This has been personal and business life since beginning. I mean, just every aspect of it. Everyone always thinks that it's easier, but it's not.
Yeah.
It is definitely harder, but even when you feel like you want to give up or you feel like everything's pushing against you, you still love it. And I don't know why.
Yeah.
That's why a lot of people, because we go through a few programs and they're always like, yeah, if you're an entrepreneur, you are like genuinely a psychopath.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, can't really explain it, but
Right.
it's just, you love it, you want to be here. And even when everyone's taking a shot at you, you still somehow on the inside can have a smile on your face saying, we're going to do this.
Yeah.
But it's kind of the best way to explain it.
Yeah. There's something about there's just something about building a business, something about building it on your own. And I had someone in another interview say, well, if I didn't do this, what would I do? And that's kind of even if you're not doing this business, you are going to be doing something else as an entrepreneur. So might as well just keep doing what you're doing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you know it's going to work.
Yeah. What do you wish you were better at when it comes to running your business?
Reading books.
Reading books? Learning?
Learning. No, my coping for that's just talking to people well experienced in their industry.
Yeah.
But I would say, learning at a faster pace, because there is only so much that you can really absorb and also be able to run the company at the same time, because there's still so much to learn and so much that you don't know, and you're starting to get more into, even as a product-based company, we're getting into the kind of more techie industries and working with a lot of people like that, which that's even changing and revolving even faster. So just being able to absorb even more would be huge. But I know I don't have a whole lot of control over that.
Right.
But there's just, there's so much stuff that I don't even know right now, that I don't even know I want to learn, that's still out there, because as a 20-year-old, it's always walking into a room being ready to learn about the next thing.
Yeah. Give me your day-to-day. Are you still helping make the candles?
I do not.
No. When did you step away from that?
Last summer, probably.
So it was just last summer?
Yeah, so it's probably been just about a year.
Was that hard?
When we didn't have processes, yes. Then we built processes, and it was a lot easier because then they knew how to make it the exact same way I could.
Yeah.
And now it's so nice because I could say, hey, we need to do these 5 updates or make this better, and it's just off my plate. And it's not even something I have to worry about, and I can actually go home and go to sleep before 1 a.m.
Right.
So that's really nice.
Yeah.
And then we've just been delegating little stuff at a time, just to different people.
Yeah. I think that it's amazing, and especially, or not, I shouldn't say especially, but even if you don't start out when you're 12 or 13 years old, but just starting a business, you don't even think about processes and procedures and what you're going to do if your business takes off. You're just worried about making money and paying rent and keeping the doors open.
Yeah.
But you realize how important it is when you get in the middle of your business and you realize that you need to hire people and bring on processes, but you don't have time for it because business is booming and you wish you would have done it sooner. So it sounds like you were able to take a step back and get the processes in place, but that it's kind of a catch-22 because you're not worried about it when you first start, but if you build your business right, you don't have time for it down the road.
Yeah, well, that's why, because a lot of the growth in the last 3 years, it's been not necessarily that I've done it or I have necessarily even implemented it. That's where it goes back to the whole we found the right people to help us. We just surround ourselves with the right people, because even now I'm still not necessarily focused on processes, but there's someone on our team who especially pushes, and there's 2 people who push the process and procedures aspect of it, and so it's like, perfect. You guys take it, you guys understand it, go with it, and then I'll just be able to approve it. So it kind of goes back to the whole surround yourself with the right people.
Yeah. So you can go out and bring business in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I mean, especially as a small business, you have to do all the admin stuff, but you also, which I hate that this is true, but you are the only person that can sell your business the best. Yeah. So whether you're a product, service, or anything, if you can get the owner in front of the person, they're going to feel like it's the best thing ever, and they're going to want to buy. Yeah. And so you have to be on the road, selling in person, taking the phone calls, doing all this stuff, while you still have to go home at 9 o'clock at night and do all the admin stuff and juggle everything else. Yeah. And so that's where that aspect comes in. So being able to delegate the rest out is very important as a small business.
Was that hard for you to delegate?
Yes.
Yeah?
Very hard, because I didn't even know how to.
Yeah.
I was like, I just get it done in 2 seconds, like keep moving and everything else, and then stepping back and being like, okay, now long term you have to delegate these things out so it's not even on your plate. Right. It's probably one of the hardest things.
I think a lot of people struggle with that. Yeah. I do.
Yeah.
Certain things I really do, and I'm trying to get better about it, but when you realize, I heard someone say one time that no one will love it as much as you do. No one will love your small business as much as you do.
Yeah.
And that's a hard fact to hear, but I think one of the things too is empowering people and letting them show their talents and how they can make your business better, and letting them do that. While it's difficult, it's rewarding too.
Yeah.
Talk about the pandemic. I don't know, were you probably still in high school then when that hit?
Yeah, my junior year.
Okay. So talk about how that whole aspect, did that change your business? Did it change how you operated? I guess, what was that like for you and your business during that time?
Well, everything changed. The minute it hit, I want to say it was 90% of our different revenue channels closed up for good. So not even just like shut down for COVID, like closed, done, walk away.
Really?
Yep. Not even a chance.
The small boutiques and things like that?
Boutiques, stores, fundraisers, different the online platform that we were using went out of, like, everything just
really
gone. And so it's like, okay, that's a shocker. So you pretty much look at your accounts and it's like, how long do we have? Right. Like, how can we keep moving? I would have been 17 or 18 when that happened. And so when you're that young too, no banks want to give you a loan, no one wants to give you a credit card, none of this stuff. So you're like, this is kind of a very touchy situation. And simultaneously, we were redesigning the Bianchi line. So I was going from an old kind of outdated look to a new luxury sleek look. So we were doing a lot of bets, a lot of gambles, and still trying to keep everything running. And that resulted in us sitting down saying, okay, let's get some one-sheeter sales sheets. We know how much product we have. We know how much money we can make if we sell the product. I'm driving between Omaha, Lincoln, and KC, and I'm knocking on every single door I can, and let's see what happens.
Wow.
And I was able to keep us open for a little while, and then we were able to, then we got a credit card to kind of help with the cash flow situation, and so we were able to kind of eke by little, and then just started growing between customs, different online platforms, into all the avenues that we have today. And with that shift, it really helped us get to where we are today, because we wouldn't have even thought outside the box for avenues for sales. Yeah.
Were you doing much online before COVID hit?
No, it was just kind of, there's a piece of it because there wasn't really a whole lot of stuff to do ad spend at the time. And then once COVID hit, we had to shift, and then now we're on Shopify. We were originally on some whole, I don't even know what it's called. But now we have Shopify, so we were able to do those upsells, ad spends, everything.
Got it. And that's changed the business.
Yep, that, and then also with all of our different wholesale and custom connections that we built out.
Do you do more online?
No. The majority of our stuff is straight up wholesale.
It is?
Yeah.
Got it. I think that's a good lesson. Like what you said, the pandemic changed your business, both good and bad, but you made changes to the business that have carried you forward. And I think that it's a great lesson how small businesses really can pivot, and they can be flexible, and they can, when things happen, they can do things that, a larger business, while they may not have the funds or the money or things like that, you can pivot and you can make a change and keep your business going.
Yeah, well, I think COVID also helped. I think it has, and I think it's going to continue to help small businesses over the course of you in the next 10 years, because I think it's also taught a lot of banks, lenders, all these people that just because something looks one way on paper doesn't mean it's actually that way in implementation.
Right. Yeah.
I think a lot of everybody's starting to see, if you give 20 grand to a small business, they're going to turn it into 100 grand.
Yeah.
Versus beforehand, if they saw, well, you're cash flow negative, you're never going to win. No, that's not true. During COVID, everyone was cash flow negative, and everyone's that's succeeded has succeeded because of minimal funding.
Right.
And so I think that's also just going to help small businesses for quite a while.
Yeah, I agree. Is this whole thing what you thought it would be?
No.
No?
It's kind of goes back to the whole I didn't know it was going to be. You have a dream of what the finish line looks like, which everyone's going to say, oh yeah, it's the $100 million mark when you sell. But I still don't know what the finish line is. It could be selling, it could be having it run because it's a very successful company. And even now, the finish line's still up in the air and we're just kind of seeing what happens.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
You know, I think there comes a certain point where, even with my business, I don't know if I'm exactly sure what the finish line looks like.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to grow and get better every day as far as what I'm doing. So, you know, some people start a business to sell it. Some people start a business just to keep it going.
Oh, yeah.
And I think if you don't know and you're right there in the middle, that's okay too.
Yeah. Well, it's like, because I know, which avenue, you know how to recognize it when it comes. But it's one of those things where it's like, if I make the definite decision and the better decision is something else, I mean, then you're going to have to worry about the whole changing your mind and putting your ego aside and all that other stuff. So it's like, just leave it open right now. You know there's going to be two avenues. You either keep it or you sell it.
Yeah.
And so when it comes, it comes.
Yeah, absolutely. What's one thing, if you could go back to day one, what's one thing you would do different? Or is there anything you would do different? Would you just let it go as it has?
Do different.
Any advice you could give yourself or that you would give yourself? Or
I would give myself all the knowledge I have now, then. I would definitely do that. Yeah, I'm not really sure I would do it differently. I definitely would have taken a different approach on learning and thinking outside the box. Because we always were taught from my parents, from everyone that we've talked to, everyone in the business community, always think outside the box, but I didn't necessarily know what it meant. Where now, we could look at different industries, look at how their sales are, their sell-through, different avenues, different sales channels, everything, and we can take it and implement it into our industry, which I did not realize was very difficult for a lot of entrepreneurs that I've learned over the last 2 years is. And that's one key thing that we've been able to learn, whether it's the alcohol industry or the product industry, the food industry, all that kind of stuff, where you would normally from the outside look at it and say, there is no implementation here. They do it their way, we do it our way.
Right.
Leave the line there. Where we have now learned we can cherry pick kind of each piece of those and build it out to our own and see what works and what's successful. And I definitely would have gone back and said, hey, like, look at it that way and just shift your mindset a little bit, and you might be able to get some of those really important accounts at an earlier stage.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
How much are your parents still involved with the business?
My dad's retired,
Okay.
so he actually is part of the manufacturing crew now.
Okay.
So he pours candles, and then my mom still works for herself. She's a motivational speaker and author, and so she travels a ton, but she does help with business strategy. And so just kind of having an outsider perspective, someone that's not in a product industry, completely disconnected in different ways, having an outsider's point of view, being able to come in and look at everything.
That doesn't hurt.
No, it doesn't hurt. And I mean, that's where a lot of things that we tell other small businesses is don't be afraid to go out there and get a board of advisors. Don't have to financially be attached to the company whatsoever, but these are people who have no correlation with your industry. Some do, some don't. And some people who maybe even had a business just like yours at a younger age. Just so you can sit there and say, hey guys, here's what the situation is. We have problems in these 5 areas and we're doing great in these 10. So what's next?
Sure.
Just because whether you're 12, 50, 80, if you're starting a business, there's still gonna be stuff you don't know because that's part of being an entrepreneur.
Yeah, absolutely. Very cool. So someone comes to you and they say, I want to start a small business. What piece of advice would you give them?
Give them a lot of advice.
Yeah. What's one thing you would tell
them? When you feel like you want to give up, don't. Really, I wouldn't. The only time I would say think about it is if you are able to look at everything and you can acknowledge, I don't have a customer base, I have no way to make money, and this is just going to be a glorified hobby that I'm going to be shelling money into. Because there are businesses that I have seen that have not made money for 8 years at a time, and they're now being very successful because they went on the right streak.
Right.
And then there's some people who were cash flow positive from day one. And so it's like, when it comes down to the money side, don't let that give you up. When it comes down to the mistakes that you might be making, don't let those give you up. Make sure you just learn from them and keep it going, and keep going as far as you can, because soon either something will stick or you will finally have enough knowledge to be able to make the right decisions.
Yeah.
And those are just different aspects that you need to learn as a business owner.
Yeah, absolutely. Great advice. So how can we find out more about you and your company?
You can either Google Nic Bianchi or look at bianchicamelco.com. And all of our interview links, everything is inside of our network tab. There's a bunch of tabs that kind of explain a little bit more on the story.
Yeah.
And then there's a lot of stories attached on the website as well.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Nick, it's been a pleasure to get to know you, to hear more about your story. I think it's very cool that you stuck with it. There's enough challenges growing up, but running a business along with that is it's crazy. I have a hard enough time with it now, and I'm way older than you. So thanks for the time. I really do appreciate it. Wish you nothing but the best in the future, and I'm sure we'll be hearing great things from you.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me.